Hello and welcome back to Modern Jubilees. Today's video is about a response to a comment that came to say that Jews and Israelites do not really have a claim to the land of Israel because they only ruled there for 200 years. Now, I'd never even seen claims like this before, but we're going to break down this claim and address it in its fullness. What is the connection between Israelites and the land of Israel? Why do Jews want to live in Judea? Why do Jews and Israelites have a claim to the land that is in the promised land of the Bible? So to look at this comment, it's saying that it's Zionist apologetic arguments to claim that Jews are indigenous to the land of Israel. It's saying that historically Jews never held Jerusalem for a significant amount of time. It's saying that the Canaanites basically have the best claim to the land of Israel. And then it goes through after the Romans conquered who ruled over Israel after then. So the idea that Israelites are the original inhabitants is claimed to be in this comment a, quote, bold-faced lie. Then there is an awesome claim that Christians and Muslims have always been at peace with one another consistently, and that's a fascinating claim in itself. Then there is a claim that Jews are welcome to live in the land of Israel under Islamic rule as co-inhabitants with the Christians and Muslims, and that in that case there would be no violence and no apartheid, ironically, separating Arabs and Jews, and that the issue is not of religion, but of apartheid ideology. So, of course, this is a wild comment to receive, and there's so much here. I've never seen anything like this. So I really want us to break it down together to understand this claim, because clearly people believe this all around the world. People do not understand the connection between Israelites and the land of Israel. It's very sad, it's very unfortunate, but it's also a natural product of there being so few Jews in the world. 0.2% of the world is Jewish. That's 0.2% of the world is Jewish. So most of the people who misunderstand the Israelites and the Jews have never met a Jew, have never spoken from a Jew, have never heard of a Jew's voice, and many of them grow up hating Jews, believing that Jews are descendants of apes and pigs and all sorts of crazy things like that. And some come out of it on their own, and thanks to the modern world opening us up to new ideas through the internet and things like that, but many do not. So let's approach this comment with sensitivity, because really this is a place of education, and this isn't about fighting or hatred or, anti-Semitism debates. It's really a place of education. So let's dive right in. Now, our story begins at the creation of the world, but we obviously won't go into all of it right here, though we have in other videos. So let's skip ahead. After Noah's Ark lands on Mount Ararat in the area of where modern Turkey meets Armenia, and classically as part of Armenia, after this, Noah's descendants eventually begin to quarrel with each other. We learn this from the Book of Jubilees. Now, of course, this entire conversation is very intertwined with the Bible and Jubilees. And if you don't want to count the Bible as a source, then you're really lost, because nothing makes sense. The Quran, if you're Muslim here, the Quran, it talks about Moses, talks about the people of Israel going to inherit the land of Israel, the chosen nation of Israel, the children of Israel. It's part of every culture. The Christians and the Muslims and the Jews all have this Bible at the source. So we cannot just disregard the source, disregard God, disregard creation, because nothing makes sense then. If you want to only go based on what your scientists and your researchers decide is truth, then you're going to get a whole lot of confusion, because in the Arab-Palestinian world, in the last few decades, they've created a philosophy where the temples never stood and all these things, which is definitely where this comment is at least partially coming from, but it's a total mess. So we need to have a united source of reality, and that reality must include the Bible and archaeology and science as a unifying thing and not as something that people can now twist and pretend that it proves that Jews were never connected to the land of Israel, because that's absolute rubbish. And anyone with, any education knows that very well. So as we were saying, the children of Noah and grandchildren begin to quarrel. Noah decides that the earth needs to be split and the land needs to be split among his 3 sons, and then they further split it among their grandsons. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japhet. Ham is given most of Africa. Japhet is given Europe and Russia and North America. And Shem is given the middle of the world, where it is neither hot nor cold. And we have these boundaries laid out in chapter 8 and 9. We went into this in another video. And here we find that Canaan, which was a son of Ham, is given as his portion and his lot in chapter 9 of Jubilees, the western part of Africa, the westernmost part of Africa. However, Canaan notoriously is the one son who completely disregards this oath that Noah and his sons made in the presence of an angel, and they all promised to go according to these boundaries on penalty of being very cursed, and that's what they all agree to. But in chapter 10, verse 28, Canaan seizes the land wrongfully. So let's read these few verses together to understand where the Canaanites were from and who they were. Ham and his sons went to the land that he was appointed by Lot to occupy in the land of the south. Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good. He didn't go to the land of his inheritance to the west of the sea. Rather, he settled in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward from the border of Jordan and from the coast of the sea. That's the Jordan River and the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. His father Ham and his brothers Cush and Mizraim said to him, "You've settled in a land that isn't yours and that wasn't appointed to us by Lot. Don't do this, because if you do, you and your sons will fall and be cursed in the land due to your insurrection. By insurrection you settle, and by insurrection your children will fall. You will be rooted out forever. Do not settle in Shem's place. It was given to Shem and his sons as their lot. You are cursed, and you will be cursed more than all the sons of Noah, by the curse that we bound ourselves in oath in the presence of the holy judge and in the presence of our father Noah." But he didn't listen to them. He stayed in the land of Lebanon from Hamath to the entrance of Egypt, he and his sons, to this day. And to this day is when the angel is with Moses on Mount Sinai after the exodus from Egypt. Jubilees is, of course, a book that was given by an angel to Moses on Mount Sinai. It was given in Hebrew. It is a Jewish ancient Israelite text. It was best preserved by the Ethiopians, by the Ethiopian Tewahedo Church, and the Ethiopian Jews. It is in all the Ethiopian Bibles and considered part of the Apocrypha. The book was lost in its original Hebrew, but hopefully we will find it in its original Hebrew, as it was found. Fragments from 15 copies of it were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the original Hebrew. Let's continue. We're in verse 33. But he didn't listen to them. He stayed in the land of Lebanon from Hamath to the entrance of Egypt, he and his sons, to this day. For this reason, that land is called Canaan. Japheth and his sons went toward the sea and settled in their lots, etc., etc. That is why the land becomes known as Canaan, because Canaan settles this land, but he is inherently cursed. The land will be taken away from him. It does not belong to him. It belongs to the children of Shem. Now Shem also splits the land among his children, but as we find out in the Bible and in Jubilees, it's very clear that the land of Israel belongs to the children of Israel. Israel is another name for Jacob, son of Isaac, son of Abraham. Now we're going to look at a timeline of events, because this comment sort of skips from the Canaanites to the Egyptians and etc. It's making a claim that the Israelites only ruled for about 200 years, and so the land actually belongs to someone else, that the Israelites who are indigenous to that land do not have the best claim. It's really all over the place, but we are going to try to make order of it, and we're going to do that by going back in the calendar. So here we have gone through what happens with, from the creation, Noah and his children. The Canaanites settle the land, but they're in the wrong place. They are inherently cursed in that land because they're not supposed to be there. Now, according to Jubilees, this splitting of the world, this division of the world, occurs in 2160 BCE. So around 4,000 years ago, that this is occurring, and this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about ancient history, but we do have the texts and the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to discuss these things. History does not begin with the Roman conquest of Jerusalem. History begins far, far before that, and that's what we're going into here. All right, so we're not going to obviously read the entire Bible or Jubilees here together in this video, but what happens after that is, yes, the Canaanites begin to populate the land of Israel. Then Avram is born in around 1846 BCE according to Jubilees. And Abram is, of course, called to go from his land, to leave Mesopotamia, and to go to the lands of Israel. God promises Abraham that he will give his descendants a land flowing with milk and honey. He promises his descendants the land of Israel. When he has Ishmael, Ishmael is blessed to be a very great nation of many, many people. But this promise of creating a nation set apart is passed on through Isaac and not through Ishmael. Although every nation has its purpose and is set apart for its own purposes, but the Bible is specifically about the nation of Israel. So Isaac is chosen, and then Isaac has two sons, and of those Jacob is chosen. Jacob is renamed Israel, and Israel and his children are promised the land of Israel. So now it must be noted, Abraham lived in the land of Israel. He was told to go to the land of Israel. God told him that the Canaanites would not be there forever because there was a curse upon those nations. Abraham lives there. Isaac lives there. Jacob lives there. Jacob raises his family there. They are living in the land of Israel, fulfilling God's wish. And if you don't believe in God, this entire story makes no sense, right? Because we're talking, yes, about religion. This is a story about religion. This is a story about God. This is a story about the Bible. And there is, again, no way to separate these things out because this is what we're talking about. This is the story. So Jacob and his family live in Israel. How do they get down to Egypt? Because there is a famine in the land of Israel. Joseph is there for that entire story. And now the people of Israel's family go down to live in Egypt for some time, and they become enslaved by the Egyptians. Then they are taken out of Egypt with God's mighty hand and many miracles that you can check out another video where we talk about the Exodus decoded. The Israelites have to wander in the desert for 40 years, and then eventually they are able to enter the land of Israel. This occurs in approximately 1260 BCE that the Israelites are entering Israel according to the Book of Jubilees, whereas the events of Mount Sinai were in 1301 BCE according to the Book of Jubilees, and there are other records of when this occurred, and they're off by like 30 years, give or take. These dates are quite clear throughout the Bible, throughout Jubilees, and throughout historical records. There's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of proof of all of these events occurring. Again, check out Exodus Decoded for that. But that's when the Israelites, as a great nation, they are 600,000 men, and that's not including women and children, and they enter the land of Israel. This is in 1260 BCE, but the claim is from much before 1260 BCE, because Avram is living in around 1800 BCE is when this all occurs. The sacrifice of Isaac is apparently on Mount Moriah, which is the mountain of Jerusalem, Mount Zion. There are stories throughout the Bible and Jubilees of what the forefathers were doing and how long they were there. So this really dates back to more like 4,000 years. And so, yes, while the Israelites were enslaved for a few generations in Egypt, that doesn't take away from the fact that this nation formed in the land of Israel. They're clearly not Egyptians because they had to be saved from the Egyptians who were enslaving them. So the Israelites are absolutely indigenous to the land of Israel more than any other nation, including the Canaanites, because the Canaanites are not meant to be in that land, and so there's an inherent curse on them the entire time that they're there. Their brothers and all the nations we who study are aware that there was a curse on them and that their time was going to end. And so it is God who now comes to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, promises them this promised land for them and their descendants forever. Now, while I genuinely wish that we could go through the entire Bible and Jubilees together right here and go over all the verses and all the stories, it's way too much, and we're not going to do that, but I highly recommend doing it, and perhaps we can do it one day if there's enough interest. But now we have to talk about the actual truth of what, colonization is, right? So the Israelites enter the land of Israel, they conquer the land of Israel from the Canaanite nations, and they rule. It takes time to conquer the land, but the first temple is completed in 957 BCE, so yes, around 1000 BCE, and it is destroyed in 586 BCE, so around 400 years later. The second temple is built in 515 BCE, and it is destroyed completely in 70 CE, and that was around 600 years. And so together the temples stood for 1,000 years. This is the reality. I don't know where someone would get that the temples only stood for 200 years, but no, they stood for 1,000 years. The first temple was known as Solomon's Temple. Solomon's Temple is known by indigenous cultures the world over. So I've found that to be an interesting way of telling indigenous peoples. Indigenous peoples know about Solomon's Temple because Solomon was an incredible peacemaker who made alliances with the nations surrounding, and he was well known for being so wise. There are stories about him in many, many cultures. And so Solomon's Temple was from 1000 to around 600 BCE. Then there is the Second Temple. The Second Temple was rebuilt after the Persian conquest of Babylon and the decree of Cyrus the Great. This is around the time of the Purim story, and then later we get the story of the Seleucid Greeks, which is the Hanukkah story, where they attempt to destroy the Second Temple, but ultimately they lose. The Second Temple is rededicated, and then there is the Herod renovation. King Herod, the Roman king, renovates the entire temple to be an absolutely magnificent temple, but then it is ultimately destroyed in 70 CE by the Romans, and then you have the subsequent conquest by Christians and Muslims, and around we go. So ultimately, we here solve the question of who are the indigenous people of the land of Israel, and really it does come down to the Bible. The Quran also mentions in chapter 5, verses 20 and 21, Moses tells the people of Israel to enter the land of Israel and possess it, and the Christians also now accept that the land of Israel was given to the Israelites. Throughout history, the people who have ruled Jerusalem and made Jerusalem their absolute capital have really only been the Israelites, because the other empires, like the Roman Empire, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, whoever wanted to come through and conquer the land, they had their capital elsewhere. And that's true for the Arabs as well. Of course, the Arabian Peninsula was the capital of the Islamic Empire, and it was never Jerusalem that was their capital. The only nation that has claimed Jerusalem as their capital and homeland is the Israelite people, the Israelite nation. It is a very modern thing from around the 1960s that as a political attempt to gain control of Israel and not allow Jews to have control of their land, that the idea of Palestinianism has come up. It's a very new thing. This is well documented and really just, the reality. Because before the 1960s, when people would talk about the Palestinians, they were talking about Jewish people. In the lands of what was known as Palestine, you had Palestinian Muslims, Palestinian Christians, Palestinian Jews. But if someone was just talking about the term Palestinians, they were referring to the Jews because it was known to everyone that the Jews originated in Judea, in the land of Israel. This is how we got the nation and the modern state of Israel in the first place, because everyone knows that the Israelites and the Jews are indigenous to the land of Israel and come from there, and that's the entire story. That's why the Jews were not allowed to stay in Europe during the Holocaust, because, and not allowed to live. The idea was they don't belong here, they're not from here, they need to go back where they came from, meaning Palestine, meaning Israel. And when the state of Israel was born, and now the Arab nations attempted to destroy the nascent country, then all of the Arab nations decided that they would also attack the Jews within their midst, kind of saying, you want a country so bad, get out of here, we don't want you here, and began to kill and pillage Jews. And so there was a mass exodus and fleeing of Jews from the Arab world. And so that's how we get the land of Israel today. That's how we get the nation of Israel today. That's how we get the state of Israel today. And that's what Zionism ultimately comes down to. It is simply the idea that, the Muslims are allowed to have some 22 giant countries. The Christians are allowed to have all of their countries. Everyone's allowed to have a country, but the Jews, from whom stem the Christian faith and in many ways the Muslim faith as well, are for some reason persecuted endlessly. Now, I want to address one more thing from this comment. And the comment is saying that Christians and Muslims have just gotten along over the history, and that's not true. We see even today tremendous suffering, tremendous fighting between Christians and Muslims. The idea that they just got along this whole time is absolutely not true. And the idea that it's just fine that everyone should just live under Islamic rule is also not correct and not true. You can't say that, Jews were treated so amazingly under Muslim rule. No, anyone who is not Muslim in a Muslim land was considered dhimmi. There are terrible things that they had to go through and wear their yellow stars and funny clothing and cross the street if a Muslim was there, and nothing could be higher than a mosque. And it was basically an idea of you are subjugated, you are lower than us, we are better than you. And the idea that everyone should have to live under Muslim rule, though clearly that is the idea of many Muslims, is not real, not democratic, and not what God wants. As we see in the Bible, which again, I'd love to just go through the whole Bible, but we're not doing that in this video. The land of Israel is set apart for the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel is set apart for God to be a nation set apart, to be a nation of priests, a holy nation, a light unto the world, to help make the world better. The idea is not that Jews are better people, Jews are better than others. The idea is Jews have an extra burden. Jews have an ol malchut shamayim, a ol mitzvot. These are the burdens. This is the yoke that the Torah has given us, the mitzvot, the commandments have given us, that God has given us. It is a yoke. It is a responsibility to do good in the world, to carry all of the wisdom and clarity that Moses brought. These are very advanced texts from very, very ancient times. And that's why I highly recommend studying the, especially Hebrew Bible, and learning even Hebrew if you can, to understand just how sacred and holy these things are. But especially check out Jubilees and my new modern English translation of it, which brings it into the modern world. This book is now understood and clear thanks to the work of so many other people throughout history who have worked so hard to pass this tradition down of the Bible and Jubilees and the holy texts that we have. And so I hope that this brings a lot of clarity to this question of what the connection between Israelites and the land of Israel is. That's not even with going into all the examples throughout history of great leaders, ranging from Napoleon to Balfour and everyone in between, who says that, of course, the Palestinians, meaning the Jews, are supposed to be in the land of Israel, that they need to have their state, that they need to be given back their land according to the Bible, which is the deed to the land. And that's also without going into everything that makes a Jew a Jew. So if you try to tell me that I have no connection to the land of Israel, personally, it's heartbreaking, because it's my entire being. The prayers that we say multiple times a day after eating, in the morning, in the evening, on the Shabbat, on holidays, we are constantly praying. At the end of the Passover Seder, we are constantly praying towards Jerusalem. We literally face Jerusalem every single time we pray, unlike the Muslims who pray towards Mecca. And so this idea that we don't have a connection to the land of Israel is wild. It's throughout all of our texts. It's throughout the Bible. It's throughout the prayers. It always has been. All the leaders who have known Jews and met Jews and seen Jews who every year on Tisha B'Av in the summertime mourn the destruction of the temples, cry, sit on the floor in actual mourning that we lost this temple. And we're not blaming Romans. I'm not anti-Italy. I'm not boycotting Italy. I'm not boycotting Rome. I'm not boycotting Christians, and I'm not boycotting Muslims. But the idea is that this is a long story between the nation of Israel and Abraham's children and God, our Lord, all of our God. There is one God in this world, one God. And that is the God of the Bible, and that is the God of Israel and of Abraham, and that is the God that asks for a dwelling place in the lower realms, a temple to be built that is a place of peace that comes about in a peaceful way where we are able to connect as nations and understand that we have a lot in common, we have a lot to discuss. God is one. We are young people, we have internet, we have artificial intelligence, we have the ability to break out of, if we were brought up to hate other people, we can break out of that. You don't have to hate someone. It's not part of any actual religion. Hatred, it should not be a part of any religion. Sadly, it has been in the past and it continues to be today, but it should not be. I think that the nation of Israel, as we said, 0.2% of the world, which only wants this small piece of land called the land of Israel, which was promised to this nation in the Bible, in Jubilees by God. And we see in the fall, there is a holiday of Sukkot, the holiday of the huts, where we remember the exodus from Egypt, where all the nations of the world go to Israel, go to Jerusalem. There's a beautiful parade every year of Christians and people who support Israel, who march in support of Israel and send their blessings and their love and are blessed and loved by the people of Israel, who are diverse, who have come back from all the corners of the world, just as the prophets have prophesied. So this is a story that is much bigger than, just some artifacts, which that's a whole other story. All the evidence of these temples, all the evidence of the Jewish connection to the land of Israel, it is there for those who seek in truth. God is there, the truth is there, and the nation of Israel lives. It is a diverse nation, it is a tolerant nation. The state of Israel has many minorities that live extremely well and love the Jewish people, and the Jewish people love them. And it is a success story, and that is why the United States supports Israel, because it is such a democratic and tolerant society that is advanced because of all the advanced studies and texts that Jews have had for so many years, thanks to Moses and Abraham and God. Thanks to God. May we all be blessed and thank God and love God, united as we can be, united as we can stand for peace and goodness and morality, which is rooted in the Ten Commandments, which is rooted in Mount Sinai, where we know that it is not okay to terrorist attacks and to pretend that Israelites do not have a claim to the land of Israel when we obviously do and are indigenous to that land. And so I wish all of you listening a wonderful, wonderful day. May we all be blessed. May we be blessed with peace. May we pray for peace. May we pray that we wake up to the reality that we are all in a shared universe together, where one God rules over us all, and we all have our mission in this world. We all have our purpose in this world. All right. Well, thank you so much again for listening, and please subscribe to this channel if you enjoy this content and want more of it. Please comment, let me know what you think, like, subscribe, share with people who might appreciate this content, and we will leave it there for today. I hope this answered your question, your comment, and gave some additional context to this very ancient conversation. We need to have a very long memory in order to hold all of the history and all of the truth that my nation has gone through, a tiny little nation with a very complex history and so much hardship. But we all have our own hardships in this world, and so may we all have the strength to deal with those hardships and turn to God more than anything else. So bless you all and have a great day. This is Modern Jubilees, and we will see you next time.